Hi, welcome to this episode of The Daily. My name is Brendan Malone. Well, in today's episode, I want to respond to the autonomy argument that you hear more and more people using to try and justify the legalisation of assisted suicide and euthanasia. In fact, it's probably the most common argument that people try and use to justify legalising it. There's two major flaws with the autonomy argument that I can see, despite the fact that its proponents often present it as if it's this foolproof and robust argument for legalised euthanasia and assisted suicide. I don't think it is at all. So the two major problems are these. Number one, the autonomy argument completely fails to account for the fact that your autonomous actions are not truly autonomous. The moment your thoughts and desires are transferred into the real world and become actions, they no longer affect just you, or very few of them affect just you. There is almost always, with almost any action that we engage in the real world, because it takes place in a community, in a society, we don't live in isolation and act in isolation, there is a flow-on effect for the community around you. So your autonomy doesn't just involve you now, it now involves obviously the medical establishment. The laws that come into effect are for all of us, not just for you. And also there is a whole lot of other societal, ideological pressures and challenges and issues of how societal consciousness views the issue of death and dying and disability and illness and other things that have an impact on a whole lot of other demographics, groups of people that live within your society. And that's why you have the disability sector so consistently opposed to legalised euthanasia. That's why you have groups who are focused on other vulnerable sectors of the community who are consistently coming out against, and very strongly against, euthanasia. It's got nothing to do with any religious reasoning for them. It's quite simply the fact that when a person starts exercising their autonomy in this way, and the state starts giving recognition to that, by legalising that action, then guess what? It has a flow-on effect for vulnerable members of the community. They are put under pressure, or a lot of them become victims of a system where they lose their power and their ability to control and to make their own free choices. So their autonomy is robbed, so someone else's autonomy can be serviced, which is completely absurd and inconsistent. Now, the second problem with the autonomy argument, and this to me is a really, really big one, is it's actually a logical black hole. It's self-contradictory when you really stop and think about it. Because basically the autonomy argument for assisted suicide and euthanasia goes something like this, that autonomy, personal autonomy in decision-making is so sacred and so important and so objectively true, and it should be up here, that the state should never ever destroy it. And that the state is destroying your personal autonomy when it doesn't actually legally allow assisted suicide or euthanasia. But of course the state should never do that, as the argument goes, because personal autonomy is so sacred and so important and such an objectively true reality that it should never ever be denied to you. And the state certainly has no right to destroy your personal autonomy in this way. However, here's the problem. By enacting laws that legalise assisted suicide and euthanasia, the state would actually be giving recognition to and allowing and promoting an act, suicide, which is the ultimate destroyer of personal autonomy. Because once you take your own life, your autonomy is absolutely gone. You can never get it back again. So in that regard, even if you were to, say, surrender yourself to something else that might cost you your autonomy, like, say, slavery, at least there's still, in a sense, there's still hope that you could possibly get out of that situation and regain your autonomy. But with suicide, there's no coming back from that. It is the ultimate destruction of personal autonomy. So if autonomy is so sacred, then why the heck would the state be sanctioning and actually bringing into existence a law that promoted and encouraged and allowed people to destroy autonomy? That doesn't make any sense. Now, people might respond and say, oh, but it's different when you're choosing to destroy your own autonomy, because it's only sacred if you want it to be, and if you want it to not be sacred anymore, then it would be okay for you to end your own life and to destroy your own autonomy in the process, because it's a very subjective thing. Well, hold on a minute, now you've changed the argument altogether. Because a moment ago you were saying that autonomy is objective and is this objective standard that must be upheld and is so fundamentally sacred and important that the state must adhere to it. But now you're saying it's actually subjective and that people can pick or choose whether or not they destroy their own autonomy. Well, that means it's actually not that objectively important, and it really isn't something sacred. It isn't something that should be enshrined in law if it's that subjective. So there's a grave inconsistency here. There's a logical black hole that the autonomy argument ends up taking people into if you try and use that to push for legalised assisted suicide and euthanasia. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily.
you.